Greetings, everyone. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Thanks for joining me. Today, I'm going to discuss what I'm calling the systemic hierarchy of transformation. A lot of times people get very interested in why some coaches, therapists, hypnotists, healers tend to get pretty amazing transformations in their work and why others sometimes don't, or they feel they do get a little bit of change, but there's not enough change to really make a difference to their clients. So we're going to talk about kind of this system that often maintains problems and how to transcend that. If you're new, welcome. I'm Paul J. Leslie. I'm a teacher, author, transformational strategist, psychotherapist, coach, and I offer these videos to everyone to hopefully learn something new, add something to the way you're working with your clients. I specialize in helping coaches, therapists, hypnotists, alternative healers, and making their sessions a little more effective, a little more transformational. So please hit the subscribe button if you find value in these videos. And hopefully those who've been with me for a while are enjoying these longer format offerings that I'm doing. So let's start here at this idea of orders of change. Now, this idea that there are two different orders of change or more really kind of developed in the 50s and from the work, a lot of the work of cybernetics, which is the study of information systems, and family therapy. A lot of people, including just luminaries like Paul Watzlawick and a lot of the Mental Research Institute of Palo Alto theorists came up with these ideas of how problems and solutions create systems. And this kind of developed into how we use this in psychotherapy. But these concepts also been used in organizational development, coaching, strategic management, systemic intervention, all these kind of ways of creating change in individuals, groups, systems. So let's look at the basic idea here. That we're going to really just talk about the first order and second order change. So to really understand these, let's make it very simple. First order change, I'm kind of labeling this as superficial or symptomatic fixes. And second order change is deep structural transformations. Now what I mean by this, and I'm going to talk a little more about each one in a second, is first order change is adjusting, tweaking little things to help adjust or change the way people or organizations are doing certain actions. Whereas second order change, there is a big shakeup, a full adjustment to the entire systemic interaction that causes whatever issue or problem to pretty much disappear or totally transform into something new. Now, it's important that we understand that these levels really help determine when we need to just make a quick adjustment, small little adjustment somewhere, or the entire system needs to be overhauled. So let's go back to this basic idea I've talked about before, is that if you kind of think of problem, a lot of times we kind of designate something a problem, we psychologically put it into a context, a frame, if you will. And within that frame, anything that's happening is part of the problem, is connected to the problem. Now, a lot of times we try to solve a problem, and our attempted solution might not always work. But anytime we're trying to solve directly a problem in a kind of a direct linear way, we are locking ourselves inside that frame. Because oftentimes the solutions we try, we attempt, they may seem logical, but they don't work. Well, human nature is that we oftentimes continue to try to do more of what's not working, or maybe even do less of what's not working. But if it's still caught inside that frame, caught inside that system, it's like the more we attempt the solution, the more we try to apply it, it's almost like the more solidified that problem actually becomes. It's very paradoxical. So anytime we have a problem, we have a solution. Every time we have a solution, we have a problem. These two are connected. And then they create this kind of circularity that the more we try to apply a solution, the more intense the problem gets. The less we apply the solution, sometimes the problem seems to stay there. So we're kind of locked into this vicious cycle, if you will. Now, it might help to think of this as a cybernetic loop in that, we have the initial input, process, output, and the output gives feedback to the input, which actually solidifies the input to create more of the process, which leads to the output, and then vice versa. So at this point, it's not always going back to how things originally started to solve this, or adjust it, if you will. It's how is this being maintained. So granted, if something starts at a certain time period in your life, but years later it's grown and grown and grown and gotten worse and worse, going back and trying to understand why something happened may be helpful from a psychological perspective and understanding, but rarely does it really change this loop, this self-regulating system. So we have to a lot of times look at this system as something that is closed. Now, if it's a closed system, it's hard for us to do anything from the outside. It's almost like we have to go inside the system. Well, if we can't get inside the system because it's closed, what we need to do then is to perturb the system, to adjust the way the system functions in a way to create a different level of change. So we are in this vicious cycle that the problem leads to our attempted solution, which leads to no change in the problem. So then the problem continues. It's creating this circularity like we just saw with the cybernetic loop. So a lot of times you find when people actually give up and stop trying to solve their problems, sometimes their problems change, sometimes they disappear. But human reaction is not to just let things be. We have to really work hard on allowing life to be what it is rather than us trying to change and control it. So let's talk about this first order of change. Now, first order change addresses the symptoms. So if we're trying to do a change at the first order, we may be making small adjustments within this existing system, whereas second order change, again, transforms the fundamental structure and the rules of the system itself. Now, let me elaborate on this. So you think about first order change as kind of a more of the same. So it's very linear, very logical, evolutionary. It follows this path. It involves, making these adjustments that we hope will improve our lives, improve our organizational performance. But it doesn't really change the person's core identity or even the underlying assumptions of the entity that we're trying to adjust. So within that given system, it pretty much remains the same. So if we rely on whatever the past experiences to solve the new problems, we end up kind of reinforcing it, or nothing changes. So it kind of relies on these established rules of the system. And these changes are usually easy to undo if they fail to work. If somebody adjusts something at a first order, it might be easy for them to accidentally readjust it back to the way it was that they don't want. So let's give a couple of real-world examples of this. So in a therapy perspective, somebody has insomnia because they're really stressed out about anxious about work, so they have insomnia. So their first order change is they try to go to bed 30 minutes earlier, or drinking herbal tea, or listening to relaxing music. All those are fine. They're not bad things to employ, but the anxiety, the main problem that's maintaining the insomnia is not even being addressed. It's just kind of, they're not changing the maintenance of the problem. If the anxiety is part of this loop, that it's still going on. The person may have a little bit better time, but in long run, it's not much change is going to happen. In a business setting, let's say we got a store that introduces a 10% coupon to boost the sales that have not been kind of sluggish. So this core product line and marketing strategy really remains identical. It's like people weren't coming in to buy it anyway, so a 10% off probably will have minimal change in the way their transactions go. In education, let's say we have students struggling with reading comprehension. So the teacher says, well, I just need to give them extra homework rather than altering the way I'm teaching them. So I just give them more of the same, as we're talking about. Maybe seem like it's different, but it's really more of the same. And so then nothing really changes in the reading comprehension, and students continue to not do well. So now, second order change. This is where we're doing things totally differently. So this is different than this logical, linear way. This is discontinuous, paradigm shifting. It's a very revolutionary way of adjusting things, and it will often seem illogical, weird, maybe even crazy to the people involved, because their perception of the problem's rooted in this blocked in problem, attempted solution, problem, attempted solution. So anything outside of that system will look a little wacky, a little crazy to the people within the system. So it really requires us stepping outside the current way we're doing things to really redefine this problem and the contextual environment that it's in. So our goal is really to permanently alter, create a new way of being with this system, almost like the old system is totally dismantled, maybe even permanently altered. So it involves challenges the way we view things. So we kind of reframe. When we reframe a problem, we look at it differently. It alters the way that we see it, that the assumptions we have, the beliefs, the values, the unwritten rules. And if it's a true second order change, once the system undergoes it, it can't easily return to its previous state, whereas the first order change, it often can. For example, someone comes in with anxiety, you can teach them deep breathing, which helps, but the anxiety will still stay there. Now, that's a first order change, whereas a second order change, it'll be something totally different, having them do something that they've never even thought about doing. It might seem totally not connected to the problem, but then by doing it, it adjusts the problem. So some real-world examples of second-order change, or going back to the person that had the insomnia from work, they realized that that's this deep-rooted career burnout and stress about career. They just decide, well, screw this. I'm just going to change jobs and professions entirely. And then the whole insomnia just disappears. Rather than just trying to manage the symptom, they adjusted the whole system. So it's like they're done, totally no reason to have any anxiety. In business, I like the example of Netflix, which years ago they were just mailing in DVDs, physical DVDs to people, and then once the new technology for streaming kicked in, they rewrote the entire home entertainment model, business model, and the whole industry. So then they started to streaming and a decrease in all the mailing of the DVDs, and their sales, obviously have gone through the roof. Now there's competition for all these different streaming services. In education, we have the school switched from the traditional lecture and grading system that we discussed before to a more self-paced, project-based, experiential learning model. And that totally adjusts everything, and hopefully it helps with reading comprehension. We don't know, but it's at least doing something to alter the way things are doing at that deep systemic level. So when do we use these? It's all nice, but I just want to be clear that neither of these are bad or one's better than the other. It really depends on the context of the problem, with the challenge we're dealing with as to whether one will be successful or not. So the way I look at it, we're going to choose first order change only when the overall system is healthy, everything's stable in the environment, and optimizing efficiency or fixing minor operational bottlenecks is the problem. It's not something that we need to totally overhaul everything, which for that's where we go to the second order change. We face some major, huge problem. The current system's just not working. Or we just need a massive external shift to kind of change the way we've been doing things and make it just obsolete. Having a family come in to see you. Sometimes if the family's having a problem and they need a little coaching, first order change can make things a little easier, but you find that it's not changing, that there's a major problem with the family. You may need to do something really out of the ordinary. So a family that's growing distant and you try to give them little tasks pull them back together. It doesn't seem to work. Well, a second order change they may need to start for example, doing each other's household chores, dressing in each other's clothing, doing all kinds of crazy things to create some kind of sense of curiosity, novelty, and interaction that's different to shake up the way that they're interacting to bring them closer together. So let's give an example here. Let's say we have a client. This client comes in and the client has a lot of anxiety, and as a result they procrastinate. They want to do things, they want to get started, but they just put it off. So what's often happening is people want to start a project, they feel anxiety, and that anxiety creates a attempted solution to pull away from the anxiety and put off whatever it is that's causing the anxiety. And then as a result, they'll beat themselves up or try harder, which is an attempted solution to the other solution, which then solidifies the problem. So this creates a cybernetic loop. So, if you're feeling anxiety and you cope by not doing what it is that's causing the anxiety, you may end up forcing yourself to try and work, or you feel anxious, even more anxious about failing, or you're going to do it wrong, or you beat yourself up or procrastinate even more to escape that discomfort. So it becomes this loop that the person gets caught in. So their solution that they keep doing to force themselves to do it seems to make the anxiety worse, which seems to make the procrastinating worse. They try to adjust the anxiety, that focuses more on the anxiety, and then they get more of the procrastination. So one of my mentors said, you can never have enough of what you don't want. And so when we put our attention and focus and try to change, those are first order changes because it's all inside the system. So they feel this anxiety about the task. They procrastinate to avoid it. And then that's no change. And that increases more anxiety. And they just caught in this vicious cycle, this circularity of the problem attempted solutions. So a first order change. This client comes in, the therapist may try to help the client out, giving them time management tools or relaxation skills, or if they're a hypnotist, maybe visualizing themselves in a hypnotic state, being successful, making a to-do list, whatever that is. So there may be some work done temporarily, but the client's still operating with a deep-seated fear of failure, so anxiety, and that's that underlying stress creates this stuck in this inside this frame of the problem, the attempted solutions. So nothing's really stayed the same, temporary reprieve at best, that then in time they will go back to kind of how they did it before, or if they do it, it is a constant struggle and they're constantly worked up and anxious and life's just miserable. So if we do a second order change, this is where, for example, the therapist may reframe the client's procrastination, not as they're just lazy or no willpower, but they say, well, this is a necessary protective mechanism. It's trying to keep you from burning out. You have all these things to do, and it's trying to keep you from burning out. So in order to honor that, the therapist tells the client, you've got to deliberately procrastinate for about a half hour every morning. So the therapist says every morning when you get up, go sit at your desk and set a timer. And you're forbidden to do anything, any productive work, anything that needs to be done. You are told to actively focus on your anxiety during that time and really focus on your procrastination. Now, when this happens, oftentimes there's a huge internal transformation that can happen. And it's almost magically eliminates the need for that person to procrastinate. Now, this makes no sense when we're looking at this from a linear, logical matter. It should be, well, either procrastinate or you don't. But now you're telling this person to intentionally procrastinate for a half hour, to intentionally focus on the anxiety for a half hour. This should be worse. The problem should be worse, but it's not. So why? Well, why it works is a couple of things. Number one, this completely alters the logic of the system. I mean, look, you can't fail at procrastinating if you're doing it on purpose. Now, let's think about this. When you procrastinate, you put things off. When you set a timer to procrastinate at a certain time, you are literally procrastinating on your procrastination because you're doing your procrastination on time. So we're already disrupting the logic of the system. And because the system, we're doing it voluntarily, it loses this autonomous power to where we feel like we're controlled by something outside ourselves, metaphorically. So when we're saying, I'm going to intentionally procrastinate now, we are doing it with a sense of purpose rather than on this, I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't seem to get myself motivated. So it also creates the whole idea that we're not fighting this anxiety. The client's not having to wrestle with it. They're scheduling it. So for a half hour every morning, you have to procrastinate on time with your anxiety and focus on that and only that. And then when you're done, you're done. You don't have to do it anymore. You don't have to procrastinate or feel anxiety anymore. And if you do, you just say, well, hold on. If I'm going to do that for first thing in the morning. That's when it's scheduled. A lot of times what I found is that clients often get bored, even frustrated during this kind of forced time period of procrastination, anxiety, and they actually begin to want to start working, wanting to do something different. This is getting boring. I'm tired of sitting here procrastinating. So it's creating the very thing that they want by not doing the very thing that is maintaining the problem. We're totally shaking up and adjusting the whole structure of that problem, which effectively breaks that cycle. So again, this is just a real basic intro to this topic. We want to look at orders of change as in, are you doing a first order of change with your clients or yourself? Or are you doing a second order? So we want to understand these levels. It helps us to determine whether we want a quick tweak of something or a complete system overall. So when you're working with a client and they come in and they're having some problem with their lives, or the company's having an organizational development issue, if you're finding that small little things within that problem, within that system isn't adjusting it, it may be time to move to a second order change to create a deep structural transformation. Just as an aside, it's important that we are applying second order change in a way that's ethical and in a way that supports clients. We're not going to try to make them do things that are unhealthy, dangerous, or just against their basic human values, because that's just not cool, and usually that backfires anyway. So if we really take the time and notice when we do have a transformational change in our sessions, what is it that happened? Was it a first order or was it a second order? I hope this little intro was helpful to you. If you're got something out of this, please feel free to subscribe to my channel, leave comments, let me know if this is helpful, if you like this longer form kind of video, and feel free to look me up online at my website, drpaulleslie.com. I have a great course called Secrets of Creating a Magical Session, where there's key elements for learning how to have really enchanted transformational sessions with your therapy, coaching, and hypnosis clients. So thanks for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day.